I never thought Christmas could haunt a person, but for me it always has. People in Cedar Hollow, a small dust-blown town tucked between Dallas and nothingness, love their Christmas lights, midnight mass, cinnamon pecan pies, and music echoing from every porch. Folks here start decorating around Thanksgiving like it's a religion. But I haven't once felt Christmas spirit in 10 years. Not since my little sister vanished. Her name was Lila. 8 years old, rambunctious, smart, talked a mile a minute. She disappeared on Christmas Eve during a block party. One minute she was laughing under the porch lights, eating a red candy cane, and the next minute she was gone. No forced entry, no witnesses, no tracks. Like the earth swallowed her up. Back then I was 16. Now I'm 26, a sheriff's deputy in the same godforsaken town I grew up in. Partly to feel useful, partly because I can't leave this place until I know what happened to her. Some people say Christmas miracles exist. Others say Christmas curses exist more. This story begins on December 22nd, 2 days before Christmas. Winter doesn't hit Texas hard every year, but this one was different. Coldest winter in decades, temperatures dropping into the teens, frost collecting on barbed wire fences like sugar. I was driving the patrol truck down County Road 12 when dispatch radioed. "Deputy Archer, swing by the Hollis place on your way back." Caller reported somebody on their porch. The Hollis Ranch is old farmland, big, empty, and quiet. The kind of place coyotes sing at night and the wind does the rest. When I pulled into the long gravel driveway, I saw an elderly woman, Mrs. Hollis, standing outside wrapped in a flannel blanket. I stepped out. "Evening, ma'am, you called?" She nodded nervously. "There was somebody on the porch, knocking real soft, 3 times. Did you see them?" "No, but they left something." She pointed toward a small rocking chair sitting on her porch, and on it, a Christmas gift box wrapped in deep green paper, edges tied with white twine. Looked old-fashioned, like something out of a 1950s catalog. "Did you touch it?" I asked. "No, sir, I ain't touched nothing." Gave me the heebie-jeebies. I walked over slowly, radio ready, hand near my holster. The tag on the box read, "For the one you miss." I froze, my stomach twisted. Not again. Mrs. Hollis said softly, "You all right, honey? You look pale." "Ma'am, has anyone in your family gone missing?" Her eyes filled instantly. "My husband. 10 years ago, Christmas Eve. He went to grab firewood and never came back. Exactly like my sister." I swallowed hard and lifted the lid. Inside was a wooden rocking horse, carved by hand, paint flaking around the eyes, but this one was heavier than it should be. I turned it over. It clicked. A hidden compartment. Mrs. Hollis gasped. "Don't open it here." "I have to." I pressed the panel until it popped open. Inside was a Polaroid photograph, old and faded. A young man, presumably her husband, standing in the middle of a forest clearing, eyes wide with terror, shoulders grabbed by hands that weren't fully visible. Mrs. Hollis brought her hand to her mouth. "Oh, my Lord." Before I could speak, my radio crackled. "Archer, you need to return to the station immediately. Another box just came in. For you." My blood ran cold. It had been 10 years since the last one addressed to me. I drove back fast, 60 and a 30, heart pounding the whole way. When I walked into the station, Sheriff Blake pointed toward my desk. There it was. Same wrapping paper, same bow, same tag. "For the one you miss." I didn't sit. I didn't breathe. I just tore the lid open. Inside was a wooden snowflake ornament, hand-carved. Same shade of varnish as Lila's jewelry box when she was little. My hands shook. I flipped it over. Something rattled inside. Sheriff Blake put a hand on my shoulder. "You sure you want to do this here?" "Yeah." I pressed the center of the snowflake. Another click. The ornament split open in my hands. Inside was a piece of map. Not a professional map. A hand-drawn sketch, with landmarks only someone from Cedar Hollow would recognize. The broken windmill, the dried cattle pond, the old pecan orchard, and finally, the hollow. a valley just outside town known for bonfires and teenage drinking. Red ink circled a spot deep inside it. Sheriff Blake shook his head. "You know it's a trap, right?" "I don't care," he sighed. "If we do this, we do it by the book. We take backup." "Then we'll never get there in time," I snapped. "Whoever's doing this knows how we work." He stared at me long. "You're gonna go with or without me, aren't you?" "Yeah," a beat. "Then fine, I'm coming." We headed out at 10:14 p.m., snowlight glowing under the moon. For Texas, the cold was brutal, wind clawing at our jackets like something alive. The hollow sat a mile beyond. The tree line, a bowl-shaped depression filled with old brush, dead oaks, and wild stories. Halfway there, we saw footprints, small footprints, bare, leading into the woods. Sheriff Blake whispered, "What kid is out here without shoes?" I whispered back, "Not a living one." We followed them to a clearing, and I swear I hadn't seen it since I was 9, an old boarded-up storm cellar with a rusted metal hatch. I flashed back instantly to the last Christmas Eve before Lila vanished. She dared me to go inside that cellar. I chickened out. She laughed and ran off. That was the last moment of her life I remember. The hatch creaked open before we touched it, as if something below had been waiting. Sheriff Blake aimed his sidearm. "On my count." But then a sound floated up, soft and gentle. Jingle bells, jingle all the way." A child singing, fragile, echoing. I whispered, voice breaking, "That's Lila." Blake muttered, "No. Whatever's down there just sounds like her." My body moved on its own, down the ladder into the dark. There were candles everywhere, dripping wax onto dirt walls. The roof beams looked half collapsed. The air was thick, cold like a freezer but humid like breath. Kids stood in a circle, 7 of them, in old winter clothes from different decades, their skin bluish from frost, lips cracked, eyes fogged like marbles. They didn't move. Sheriff Blake whispered behind me, "What in God's name?" But I couldn't hear him anymore, because one child stepped out of the circle. My sister, Lila, same little brown curls, same freckles, same pink shoes from that Christmas Eve party 10 years ago. She whispered, "Tommy." Hearing my childhood nickname shattered me. I stumbled forward. "Lila, I'm here. I'm right here." Her smile twitched, like something was pulling her face into an expression. "You came back." "Yes, I never stopped looking, I swear." She blinked slowly. The other children in the circle tilted their heads in unison, creaking, unnatural. Sheriff Blake grabbed my arm. "Do not go any closer." But Lila said, "Come get me, Tommy. Hold my hand so we can go home." I took another step. Then I felt it before I saw it, the presence behind the children. Something huge shifted in the shadows, antlers scraping wood, breath rattling, weight bending the beams. Sheriff Blake shouted, "Tom, move!" Then the candles blew out. Darkness swallowed everything. The kids laughed, all of them, a chattering, broken giggle echoing around us. I felt small fingers grab my wrist. "Come with us," Lila whispered. "We're so cold." Panic shot through me. "Lila, please!" She answered with a voice no child should ever have. "It takes the one you love and keeps the one you miss." I dropped to my knees, sobbing. "Why are you saying that?" She leaned close, her breath like winter air. "So you'll never be alone again." Sheriff Blake yanked me backward just as something huge slammed the ground in front of us, antlers tearing through dirt like spears. We sprinted. Kids screamed behind us. Something massive charged up the tunnel. We climbed the ladder as the hatch shook so violently it bent. We threw our bodies against it, holding it shut. The singing began again under our feet. Dozens of voices, children and adults, humming Christmas songs out of tune. Sheriff Blake gasped, "Jesus Christ. This isn't just your sister, this is everybody." Everyone Texas has lost at Christmas. The singing built and built, and then stopped. The cellar went silent. We didn't speak on the drive back. Next morning, Sheriff Blake went to get the warrant to seal the hollow permanently. I stayed at the station, numb, staring at my sister's wooden snowflake. That's when I noticed something. A new small tag tied to the twine. I swear it wasn't there before. My hands shook as I lifted it. For the one who found, not missed, not lost, found. My heart stopped. Before I could move, Sheriff Blake walked in, but something was off. His clothes, covered in frost. His eyes, dull, cloudy. His breath, visible in the warm station air. And in his hand, a brand new Christmas gift box. He dropped it onto my desk, gently. "You shouldn't have come looking alone," he said in a voice not his own. The box tag read, "Greater than Tommy Archer. Welcome home." Less than every light in the station flickered. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Little ones. I turned toward the sound. Pink shoes, Lila standing in the doorway, smiling, holding a second box. "It takes the one you love and keeps the one you miss." My vision blurred with tears, my hands shook, my legs felt numb. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was her small hand touching mine. Warm. Alive. No one in Cedar Hollow has seen Deputy Thomas Archer since Christmas Eve. Every year on December 24th, 2 new boxes appear on the station steps. One wrapped in green, one wrapped in pink. The tags always say the same thing: greater than for the one you miss, for the one you found. And every year, someone else disappears. Every December, the residents of Snow Pine Lodge looked forward to the Winter Eve Festival, a tradition the mountain town had kept for nearly 80 years. Families filled the cabins, children raced up and down the snowy hills, and the lodge glowed with candles, evergreen garlands, and the smell of hot cider. For most people, it was magical. For Nora Whitfield, it was a reminder. Her husband Owen disappeared during the festival 2 years earlier. They had been staying in cabin 6, the one closest to the woods. Owen stepped outside for just a second to take a phone call. When Nora went to check on him, she found only his footprints leading into the trees and a single set of footprints leading back out. She had never seen footprints like that before. Too narrow, too long, toes slightly pointed, almost human, almost. No one believed her. They blamed the storm. They blamed the altitude. Some blamed grief. But every Christmas since, Nora returned to the lodge, stayed in the same cabin, left the light on for Owen, prayed for anything, any sign of what had happened. This year, she came alone. The snowstorm hit harder than any in decades, trapping the guests inside the lodge. The power went out just after midnight, and the staff handed out lanterns and blankets. Everyone gathered around the massive stone fireplace except Nora, who slipped back to cabin 6, lantern in hand. She couldn't explain it. Something had been pulling at her all night, a feeling she recognized, a presence she hadn't felt in years. The moment she stepped into the cabin, she heard it. 3 taps on the back window. Not on the glass, on the wood frame. Slow, rhythmic, familiar. Nora froze. Her breath fogged the air. The lantern flickered. Tap, tap, tap. She turned. The window overlooked the treeline. Snow drifted against the glass, thick and swirling. Nothing moved outside. Then a shadow, tall, thin, standing just past the treeline, its outline blurred by the storm. "Owen," she whispered. The shadow stepped closer slowly, deliberately. Nora opened the window latch, hands trembling. A blast of icy wind slammed into her, scattering the lantern flame. "Hello," she called into the white darkness. The shadow froze. Then something emerged from the storm, not a person, not fully. A figure stepped into view, its head bowed, shoulders hunched, skin pale blue, lips cracked and bleeding. Snowflakes clung to long, tangled hair. It looked like Owen. It looked exactly like the moment she saw him last, except his eyes were glazed with frost, reflecting the lantern light like glass. He reached out a trembling hand. Nora sobbed. "Owen, my God, Owen, you're alive." A crackling sound escaped his throat as he opened his mouth. Cold. The word broke apart like ice snapping. Then his jaw widened too far, like something was pulling it open from behind. Nora gasped. "Owen! Owen! What?" A second shape appeared behind him, taller, thinner, its limbs too long, its body blending with the white out like a dark branch. It held Owen upright by the shoulders, pushing him forward like a puppet. Nora stumbled backward. Owen's head snapped upward, staring at her with frozen, unblinking eyes. "Inside," he croaked. "Let me inside." The taller figure leaned close, its face still hidden by the storm. Nora slammed the window shut. The figure moved instantly, slamming both hands onto the glass with inhuman force. The wood frame cracked. The lantern went out. The cabin plunged into darkness. Nora crawled backward, hands shaking uncontrollably. The glass began to frost over from the outside. Thick white ice spread across it like veins. A distorted face pressed against the window, not Owen's. A smile, thin, stretched, wrong, formed in the ice. Then she heard it. A whisper, a voice that sounded like Owen's, and something else layered underneath. "Let us in. It's Christmas." She screamed for help and ran toward the door, but the door wouldn't open. Frost had sealed it shut. Voices rose outside the cabin, hundreds of whispers drifting through the storm, circling the lodge. Cold, cold, cold. Nora pressed herself into a corner and covered her ears. The whispers grew louder. The window cracked. A long black shape poked through the split, feeling blindly along the wall, something like an arm, but bent in impossible angles. Nora screamed again. Footsteps thundered toward her cabin. The lodge caretaker forced the door open with 2 staff members. They pulled her out just as the window shattered inward, shards of ice bursting across the room. They slammed the door behind them and dragged Nora through the storm. She didn't stop sobbing, not even when they reached the safety of the lodge, not even after the caretaker wrapped her in blankets. "What did you see?" he asked gently. Nora trembled uncontrollably, but the caretaker's expression turned grim when she whispered her answer. "Owen. Owen said he wanted to come inside." The caretaker sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Every year," he murmured, "someone lost to the mountain tries to come home for Christmas." Nora stared at him, horrified. "What do you mean, someone?" The caretaker nodded solemnly. "You're not the first one to hear the knocking." Outside, the storm howled, clawing at the windows. And somewhere in the blizzard, a voice called out, dragging her name through the freezing wind. The Pinehurst retirement home was quiet on Christmas Eve. Snowflakes drifted past the windows like tiny white sparks, settling on the railings and frozen garden paths. Most families had already visited earlier in the day, leaving the halls silent except for distant televisions and the beeping of medical monitors. Nurse Emily Carter didn't mind the night shift. The elderly residents loved her, and Christmas Eve usually passed peacefully. But this year something was different. The moment she stepped inside, she felt it. An odd heaviness in the air, like the building was holding its breath. The lights flickered, the thermostat dropped without warning, and several residents complained about someone walking the halls, even though they were all accounted for. At 10:42 p.m., she was doing rounds when she heard a soft jingle behind her. A single bell, not from the TV, not from any decoration. This sound was older, metallic, resonant, like a bell forged decades ago. Emily turned. The hallway was empty. She checked the decorations. Nothing had bells. The hallway trees were bare, the wreaths were simple pine. Nothing should have made that sound. She shook it off and walked toward room 209, Mr. Hollander's room. He was 87, kind, quiet, and always awake late reading Christmas classics. She knocked gently. "Mr. Hollander, it's Emily." Silence. She opened the door slowly. Mr. Hollander sat upright in bed, eyes wide open, breathing fast. His hand trembled as he pointed toward the window. "He's outside," he whispered. "He found me." Emily frowned. "Who?" Mr. Hollander squeezed his eyes shut. "I didn't mean to leave him out there. I didn't know he'd follow." Emily approached the window. She regretted it instantly. A figure stood in the snow by the tree line, tall, thin, wearing an old-fashioned coat dusted in frost, the fur collar dark with age. A long red scarf trailed behind him like a strip of blood. He held a lantern glowing a weak, dying orange. Emily whispered, "Is that someone lost?" Mr. Hollander shook violently. "He came for me last Christmas." I didn't answer, so he waited. Emily turned back to him. "Who is he?" Mr. Hollander swallowed hard. "The caroler." The figure stepped forward, not walked, glided across the snow, each movement smooth and unnatural. The lantern flickered with each glide. Emily backed away from the window. "I'm calling security." Before she could move, the lights cut out. The entire retirement home plunged into darkness. Silence. Then a deep humming echoed through the hallway. Low, slow. A melody dragged out in long, guttural tones. A Christmas carol, but sung wrong. Emily felt her stomach twist. It was, "Oh, come all ye faithful." But the notes were warped, pitch shifting unnaturally like someone singing through cracked, frozen lungs. Mr. Hollander whimpered, "Don't let him in. Don't answer him." A knock at the window. 1, 2, 3. Emily turned. The figure stood inches from the glass, face obscured by frost and shadow. His hand pressed against the window pane, fingers long and crooked. The lantern cast a sickly glow over his face, a face that wasn't human. The eyes were sunken, sockets rimmed with ice. The mouth stretched too wide, lips cracked and torn, teeth darkened like old wood. The humming grew louder. Emily grabbed Mr. Hollander. "We have to go." They rushed into the pitch-black hallway. Emergency lights flickered red, painting the walls with long shadows. The humming followed, then the jingle of a bell. Far away at first, then closer. Closer. Emily pulled Mr. Hollander toward the elevator, but the power was too unstable. The doors wouldn't close. She dragged him toward the stairwell instead. A shadow appeared at the far end of the corridor. The caroler. He held the lantern low, humming louder now. The sound vibrated through the floorboards and into Emily's bones. His body swayed slightly as he moved, lantern flickering wildly. Mr. Hollander sobbed. "I hear him. I hear him in my head." Emily clamped her hands over his ears. "Don't listen. Don't look at him." But she looked for just a moment. The caroler stopped, tilted his head, smiled. Then he whispered, voice layered, echoing, "Faithful." Emily yanked Mr. Hollander into the stairwell. They stumbled down the steps, nearly falling on the icy concrete. The humming grew louder, bouncing down the stairwell like a choir of one. When they reached the first floor, the stairwell door slammed open on its own. A cold wind surged in. The carolers stood outside the entrance window, lantern dimming, head snapping toward them like a puppet under strings. Emily dragged Mr. Hollander to the lobby. She grabbed the phone, but the lines were dead. Snow blew violently against the entrance doors, fogging the glass. A silhouette approached. Slow gliding lantern barely lit. Mr. Hollander collapsed to his knees. "I can't outrun him. I left him calling in the cold. I left him alone." Emily knelt beside him. "What do you mean?" Mr. Hollander sobbed into his hands. "We were children," he knocked on. "Our door singing carols, and my father locked him out. He froze on our steps. I never forgot his face. And every Christmas Eve he comes back for me." A long shadow fell across the lobby floor. The caroler stood outside. He pressed his face to the glass, mouth opening wider than any human jaw could. Frost erupted across the inside of the doors. The humming stopped. Silence. Then the doors burst open. Wind howled through the lobby. Papers flew. The lantern's dying flame cast grotesque shadows on the walls. Emily screamed and pulled Mr. Hollander behind a counter. The caroler drifted inside, head twitching, arms limp, lantern swinging, his mouth slowly closed, then stretched into a thin, horrific smile. He reached toward the counter. Mr. Hollander whispered, "I'm sorry." The caroler stopped, then nodded. Once lights flickered, snow whirled, and he was gone. The front door slammed shut. The temperature rose slowly. The humming faded into nothing. Emily peeked over the counter. Nothing remained except the lantern, lying on its side, flame finally dead. Mr. Hollander died 2 days later in his sleep. On Christmas morning, Emily found a small package outside the retirement home entrance. Inside was a single jingle bell, old, rusted, cold as ice. When she shook it, it didn't ring, but she heard humming. Far away, getting closer. You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave. Because on this channel, every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the fear-bound family. I never thought Christmas Eve would be the night I'd learn what real fear feels like. I was supposed to be at my sister's place in Boise, surrounded by family, laughter, and the same messy traditions we repeated every year. But this Christmas, I wasn't in the mood. Things had been rocky between me and my mom ever since Thanksgiving, and when we argued again over the phone that morning, over something stupid as usual, I snapped and told her I wasn't coming. She said, "Fine, do whatever you want." And I did. I stayed in my small rental house on Pine Ridge Drive, planning to enjoy the peace I'd been craving for months. The snowstorm outside rattled the windows and blanketed the street, but inside I had the soft glow of the Christmas tree, a mug of peppermint hot cocoa, and a stack of cheesy holiday movies. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the world wasn't demanding anything from me. I curled up under my fleece blanket, trying not to think about family drama. Work had been killing me. My relationship had recently ended, and honestly, Christmas cheer just felt exhausting. For once, being alone wasn't loneliness, it was relief. Around 10:07 p.m., I paused the movie to answer a text from my younger cousin. "You sure you're not coming?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying, "Yeah, I'm good. Just taking time for myself tonight." I could practically hear the disappointment through the screen, but I told myself I needed this. By 11:50 p.m., I was halfway through my second movie, drifting towards sleep. The only light in the house came from the TV and the tree, not the kind of glow that makes everything feel soft and safe. Then came a knock, a single sharp bang, bang, bang that jolted me upright. I froze, the blanket halfway off me. Nobody should have been outside, not in that snowstorm, not at midnight. "Probably a neighbor," I muttered to myself, though my voice sounded shaky even to me. I set my mug down, walked to the front door, and peeked through the peephole. That's when I saw him. A man dressed head to toe in a Santa suit, not the fluffy mall Santa kind, but a cheap one. The coat sagged unevenly, the belt hung too loose, and the fake beard sat crooked across his jaw. Wet snow clung to his boots. He wasn't smiling, just standing there. His head was tilted slightly as if waiting for me to speak. Every instinct in me whispered that something was wrong. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice calm through the door. "Can I help you?" The man stepped closer. His gloved hand brushed the doorframe. "It's Santa," he said in a voice too soft to match his expression. "I'm here to deliver your gifts." My skin crawled. "You've got the wrong house," I answered firmly. He almost laughed. Not loud, not cheerful. Just a quiet breath of amusement. "No," he said, "this is the right house." Something in the way he said right made my heart trip in my chest. I backed away from the door. Seconds passed. Then bang, bang, bang. Louder. I looked again through the peephole and nearly jumped. He was staring directly into it, like he somehow knew exactly where my eye would be, his face inches away. His beard had shifted, exposing cracked lips twisted into something between a grin and a sneer. "Let me in," he whispered. Panic shot through me. I snapped the deadbolt shut and backed up until my spine hit the wall. Silence. I forced myself to breathe, forced myself to listen. Maybe he would leave. Maybe it was a prank, maybe. From the living room window, I peeked. Outside, the porch was empty. He was gone. The street was a blur of swirling snow. No cars, no footsteps I could see. The storm erased everything too fast. I tried to convince myself it was over. I checked every lock twice, then crawled back to the couch. But I didn't play the movie again. I just sat there staring at the dark TV screen, listening to my heartbeat pound in my ears. Around 1:12 a.m. I heard it, a scraping sound along the side of the house, like metal dragging against siding. Slow, deliberate. My breath caught. I muted the TV, even though it had been silent already, and held still. Then came another sound, crunching in the snow. Footsteps, slow ones. They were behind the house. I crept toward the kitchen, every instinct screaming not to, but I had to know. I crouched near the window and gently pushed the curtain just 1 inch aside. He was there. The man in the Santa suit stood in my backyard, motionless, staring at the house like he was reading my thoughts. His fake beard hung even lower, and the wind pushed snow around him, but he didn't move. He didn't shiver. He didn't blink. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stop the sound that crawled up my throat. Then he turned, sharply, like he heard me breathe. Footsteps followed slowly, circling back toward the front door. 3 knocks, not frantic, confident. "Let me in," he said again, the same strange calmness in his voice. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "Go away," I screamed. "I'm calling the cops." Silence. Then the front door rattled violently, like someone yanking it with both hands. Then the back door, then the side window. He was checking the entire house, every entry, one by one. I ran to the living room, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man trying to get into my house, I whispered, collapsing to the floor. I gave the address, my voice tangled in panic. Stay on the line with me. Officers are on the way. Do not engage him. I heard footsteps on the porch again. The voice outside changed, louder, angrier. I said, "Let me in." He pounded so hard the wreath on the door fell to the ground. Then it stopped. Nothing. Not a sound. The dispatcher spoke softly through the phone. "You're doing great. Officers are almost there. Stay where you are. Do not open any door." I didn't move. I sat against the wall, clutching the knife so tightly my fingers hurt. Minutes crawled by like hours. Then through the window, flashing lights appeared, red and blue flooding across the snow. I burst into tears. A police officer knocked and announced himself. They swept the property, checked the whole block, even went door to door asking if anyone else saw him. They found footprints circling the house, leading toward the tree line behind the yard, then disappearing into the woods. No one else had seen him. One officer said, "You did the right thing calling us right away. Trust your instincts." Another added, "Storm like this, whoever it was couldn't have gotten far." But I didn't feel relieved, because when I walked them to the back door to show where I'd seen him through the window, I noticed something in the snow that almost made me collapse. Footprints. But not just footprints, knee marks. He had been kneeling directly below the kitchen window, watching me. For how long? I didn't want to think about. The police stayed outside until I packed a bag. I didn't even bother turning off the Christmas tree. I got in my car and drove straight to my parents' house in the early hours of Christmas morning. My mom opened the door before I even knocked, eyes puffy like she'd been crying too. She didn't ask why I came. She just pulled me into a hug and whispered, "I'm glad you're here." And I held on like I was afraid to let go. That was last Christmas. This year I still have the tree. I still have the fleece blanket. But I don't stay home alone on Christmas anymore. And anytime I hear boots crunching in the snow outside or someone knocks unexpectedly, My blood turns to ice. I still don't know who that man was. I still don't know how he knew my name. Because when I replay that night, I keep remembering something I was too scared to register fully in the moment. Right before the cops arrived, when everything was quiet, from the backyard I heard him whisper through the kitchen window, "I'll come back next year." I pray he was lying, but every Christmas Eve, I barely sleep, clutched in my hand. Every creak and gust of wind sent adrenaline through me. Somehow exhaustion eventually knocked me out. If I had known what I would wake up to, I'd have forced myself to stay awake forever. Christmas morning, 7:12 a.m. The first thing I saw was my phone. A notification lighting up the screen. A picture, no message, no number saved, just a picture. My blood turned ice. It was a photo of me sleeping on the couch, taken from inside my apartment. My scream echoed through the entire building. I bolted to the door, ready to run to the police station, when I saw something pinned to the wood by a small silver bell. A note, written in red ink, messy and slanted. "Thanks for letting me in." Below it, another sentence. "Tonight we finish the holiday properly." I collapsed to my knees, sobbing, breath coming in broken gasps. He had been inside. He could still get inside. And he wasn't finished. I called the police again. This time they sent 3 units. They searched everything again. They took the note, the photo, even swept for fingerprints. Nothing. Around noon I got a call. "Officer Ramirez." "We need you to come to the station," she said. "We found something." I drove straight there, heart pounding. She met me in a conference room and slid a folder across the table. Inside were crime scene photos, one from San Antonio, one from Phoenix, one from Denver. 3 different apartments, 3 different single women who lived alone. All 3 photos showed the same note pinned to their doors. "Thanks for letting me in." All 3 women had been attacked on Christmas Eve, but the last woman on the list had not survived. I shook uncontrollably. "Why me? Why my apartment?" Ramirez's expression darkened. "We don't know, but you're the first victim to get away. That means he wasn't done with you. So he'll come back. Yes, he will." I felt like I was shrinking, like I was dissolving into the chair. "We're not going to let him," she said. "I won't let you be another case file." She offered something I didn't expect. "You'll stay at my place tonight. My wife and I used to take in emergency victims all the time. You'll be safe, I promise." Every part of me wanted to say yes, to run away, to never go back to that apartment again. But something inside me, some stubborn fury, refused. "This is my home," I said through tears. "I won't let him take it from me." Ramirez nodded slowly. "Then I'm staying with you." She meant it. She grabbed her gear, called for a backup unit to wait outside the building, and followed me home. We got there around 5:45 p.m. I kept expecting him to appear in the parking lot around the corner on the balcony, but there was no sign of him. Inside, Ramirez made tea and walked through every room, checking locks again. She was calm, but I caught her looking over her shoulder more than once. By 8 p.m., the apartment was quiet again. Too quiet. "She likes Christmas lights," Ramirez said suddenly, motioning toward the boxes. "Let's make it feel less like a war zone and more like a home." We decorated the tree together, hung lights above the windows, put cinnamon candles on the counter. For a moment, I almost forgot. I almost felt normal again. Then the electricity cut out. Not the building, not the street, just my apartment. The Christmas lights went dark. The heater stopped. The refrigerator hummed to a stop. The silence hit like a physical force. Ramirez grabbed her gun. "Don't move." My breath trembled as she checked the fuse box, not tripped, not damaged. "It was shut off manually," she whispered. Then I heard it. From the bedroom, the bell, the same small bell that pinned the note to my door. It jingled, softly, like something was moving in the dark, something waiting. Ramirez motioned for me to stay back, slowly moving toward the hallway. But as she stepped forward, Something happened so fast I barely saw it. A dark figure lunged from the hallway. Ramirez fired, dum, but the gun was knocked from her hand when sliding across the hardwood floor. "Run!" she shouted. I didn't think. I ran. But I didn't make it far before an arm like iron wrapped around my waist, yanking me backward. I screamed, kicking, clawing, but he was impossibly strong. His voice rasped against my ear, one warm breath dripping with hatred. "I told you we'd finish Christmas properly." Ramirez hit him from behind, knocking him off me, shouting for me to get out. I scrambled toward the door, but he grabbed my ankle, dragging me back hard enough to slam my chin against the floor. My vision flickered white. Ramirez tackled him again, screaming for me to run, but he threw her like a rag doll into the side table. I grabbed the first object I could, a broken piece of Christmas garland, its metal support jagged on the end. He lunged at me. I slammed the jagged metal into the side of his neck. He roared, clutching his own bleeding throat, rage exploding in his eyes. He charged again, but Ramirez fired 3 shots, hitting him directly in the chest. He crashed to the floor, blood pooling under the cheap Santa suit, breaths turning wet, ragged, dying. Then, the sirens. Backup police burst through the apartment moments later. It was over. It was finally over. I spent Christmas night in the ER, Ramirez too, both of us bruised, shaken, exhausted, but alive. Police identified the man as Eli Turner, a serial predator who targeted women alone on Christmas, breaking into their apartments weeks earlier to hide, waiting for the right moment. He'd been living in the vacant unit next to mine. He dug through the wall. He watched me for days. He waited. He almost won, but he didn't. It's been 11 months since then, and today is December 24th again, Christmas Eve. I'm not in Houston Heights anymore. I moved to a secure townhouse community in Sugarland with security cameras, motion sensors, and neighbors who check in daily. Officer Ramirez and her wife are coming over for dinner tonight. Trauma takes time. Fear takes longer. But I'm healing, and I'm not alone anymore. As I finish writing this, I look out my window at the lights lining the street. Warm, bright, safe. For the first time since last Christmas, I can breathe. I survived him. I survived the night he chose me, and I'm done being the victim in my own story.